Definitely. I do think it's a pattern that's happening everywhere, and especially now with this pandemic, is the power structures have been slowly eroding for years now, and especially with the media, since Rollo, you have a big media presence now. How do you trust any of these sources? Do you watch any mainstream news or?
I don't trust any mainstream news
Yeah.
whatsoever at all. And it's funny you should say that because it's actually a theme that's in my fourth book. I wrote an essay called the New Enlightenment, or the Age of the New Enlightenment, and in that I kind of make a comparison to how we used to think about things like old order. Like one of the old order way of thinking about media was that we could somewhat trust the news organizations to vet themselves, to have an editorial staff, to to fact check, to do all these kinds of things. And then we find out in the new order that that never happened. And so what else, what were they lying about before we had the internet? What were our media sources lying about back in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, before we had instant access? Like, for instance, like when a riot goes down, or like during the first Trump election, you'd get guys like Milo Yiannopoulos or Ann Coulter or whatever, and they'd say, we're going to go give a free speech rally in Berkeley. And you would see like Antifa would be there. There'd be violence. There'd be all this stuff that would be going on. And you would never see it on the news because that was not what they're supposed to report. But yet you knew it went on because like a guy like Tim Pool is there videotaping the whole thing live, real time, and broadcasting it on Periscope or Twitter or whatever. And everybody and their mother has a high def 4K cell phone camera wherever they go. And so now we see in the new order, because things have changed technologically, that we see that the sources that we used to trust up until this point have really been full of shit.
Oh yeah, every institution
for a very long time. So that's one example of the new order. So if that's the case, if I know now that, according to what I can see on Twitter, and according to, I'm not saying there's no such thing as fake news, there are, but if I'm watching it happen live, real time with Tim Pool, and it's not on my 6 o'clock news when I'm watching CBS or whatever like that, that leads me to believe that they're trying to filter what it is that I'm supposed to see. Right. And the other thing is that's legacy media. They still think that you're not looking, you're not paying attention, and you are paying attention because now it's easier than ever. The barrier to entry is gone to pay attention and to be a part of that. Same thing with like Harvey Weinstein. The Me Too movement could never have existed prior to this time. The Me Too hashtag has been around since 2006, but nobody even heard about it until 2017. Because that's when everybody made a big deal out of it. And now it's not even just Me Too. It's like time's up. And, and then we have women marching in the streets with big pink pussy hats and everything. And those movements, that understanding could not have ever existed prior to this. Rollo Tomassi, could not have existed as I do at any other point in history than I do right now. Because if I were to write The Rational Male, and I was going to take that, imagine me taking that, the manuscript, and taking it to a publisher and say, will you please publish this book? It's called The Rational Male. It's great. It's like the Bible of the manosphere. Even today, if I were to do that, I would get laughed out of, like, say, a traditional publishing house, because they had the keys to the castle. Well, guess what? Now we have digital publishing. We have print on demand. We have, independent authors being published all the time. And unfortunately, it's Amazon that owns 86% of that market. So that's the downside to it. But I could not have existed. Roosh could not have existed. Any of these guys who have a book out right now, they could never have existed prior to, like, say, 2013, 2014.
Yeah. It's the Wild West in that sense, I think.
It's Wild West in a lot of different fields.
Yeah, definitely.